My husband asked me for a divorce on Christmas Day and his family started clapping, but what I did afterward left them in ruin and destroyed their precious, perfect reputation. Yes, you heard that right. They clapped. 32 people, dressed in their finest Christmas attire, with $300 a bottle champagne glasses in their hands, clapped when my world fell apart in front of them, as if it were a show, as if my humiliation were the best Christmas gift they could receive. My name is Sofia Martinez. I am 34 years old, and on the night of December 25th, in a Georgian-style mansion on Beacon Hill, Boston, I learned exactly how much a family can hate someone they consider beneath them. But before I tell you about my revenge, about how I turned their perfect lives to ashes, you need to understand how I got there, because this story does not begin with cruel applause at a Christmas dinner. It begins 7 years earlier, with a charming smile and a beautiful lie wrapped in the shape of a man named Richard Whitmore. It was October. I was 27, and had just finished my master's degree in art history at Columbia University. I was working as an assistant curator at a small but prestigious gallery in Soho, specializing in contemporary Latin American art. That night we were opening an exhibition for an emerging Colombian artist, and I had spent 3 months organizing every detail. The place was packed with collectors, critics, and the kind of people who go to openings just to be seen. I was running back and forth making sure everything flowed perfectly, that each piece was appreciated, that no drunk idiot spilled wine on the artworks we had cared for like babies. Richard came in around 9 in the evening, tall, blonde, ice blue eyes, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my salary. But it wasn't his appearance that caught my attention. It was the way he looked at art. He really looked at it, studied it with an intensity I rarely saw in the rich people who frequented these events. Our eyes met across the room. He smiled. I, like a complete idiot, smiled back. He approached with 2 glasses of wine. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering me one. "I've seen you running around all night. You're clearly the person making all this work." "That's obvious, am I?" I took the glass, grateful for an excuse to pause. Let's say I recognize passion when I see it. Richard Whitmore. He extended his free hand. Sofia Martinez. I shook his hand, feeling an electric spark I should have recognized for the warning sign it was. We talked for 2 hours. He was smart, funny, and charming. He asked about my life, my work, my dreams. He seemed genuinely interested in every word I said. When he pointed to my favorite piece in the exhibition, a controversial installation that mixed religious elements with social critique, and described it as contained rage, a beautiful despair, I felt I had finally found someone who understood me. How stupid I was. When the gallery closed, he invited me for coffee. I said yes. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into months of intense courtship. Richard took me to the best restaurants, got me tickets to impossible-to-get shows, sent me flowers with notes, quoting poets I had casually mentioned in conversation. He made me feel special, seen, valued, loved in a way I had never experienced. The sex was incredible, not just physically but emotionally. Richard seemed to know exactly what I needed, how to touch me, what to whisper in my ear to make me feel like the most desired woman on the planet. "You're different from all the women I've ever met," he would tell me while we were tangled in the sheets of his Upper East Side apartment. "You're real, authentic. You're not pretending to be someone else." The irony of those words would haunt me for years, because I would spend the next 6 years of my life pretending to be exactly that someone else. 6 months after we met, Richard proposed to me in the penthouse of his apartment overlooking Central Park. He knelt with a diamond ring that shone like a captured star, and said the words every woman in love wants to hear: "Marry me. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want you to be the mother of my children. I want to grow old by your side." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was completely, stupidly, blindly in love. What I didn't know then was that to his family, I was not a fairy tale come true. I was a nightmare, a threat to their blood purity, to their perfect legacy, to everything they represent in their small, privileged world. The first time I met Eleanor Whitmore, Richard's mother, was 2 weeks after the engagement. He organized a dinner at the family home on Beacon Hill, a 3-story mansion that had belonged to the Whitmores since 1872. Eleanor greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "So you're the Mexican girl," she said, making the words sound like a contagious disease. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Whitmore. I extended my hand, still naive, still hopeful. She looked at my hand as if it were something contaminated before giving it a brief, weak shake, as if touching me caused her physical pain. Dinner was an interrogation disguised as polite conversation. Where was my family from exactly? What did they do? What schools had I attended? What social connections did I have in the United States? Every answer I gave seemed to confirm some horrible prejudice they already had about me. A Mexican university, repeated George, Richard's father. When I mentioned my undergraduate degree, his tone said everything his words did not. I imagine it's very different from American institutions. The National Autonomous University of Mexico is one of the best in Latin America, I responded, keeping my tone polite, though I could feel tension tightening my jaw, and my master's was at Columbia here in the United States. Ah, Columbia. Eleanor nodded, as if she were evaluating cattle at a market. It's a good school. Not Harvard or Yale, of course, but it's respectable. Richard squeezed my hand under the table. I interpreted that gesture as support, as solidarity. Looking back now, he was probably just nervous that I would say something to embarrass the perfect image he had built of us. Richard's sisters, Victoria and Charlotte, watched me from across the table like scientists studying a bacterium under a microscope. His 3 brothers barely spoke to me all night, as if talking to me was beneath their dignity. After dinner, as Richard and I were in his car heading back to New York, I finally exploded. Your mother hates me, I said bluntly. She doesn't hate you. She just needs time to get to know you. She's from another generation, has her old-fashioned ways of thinking. Richard, she called me the Mexican girls as if that were my full name. She didn't ask a single thing about me as a person, just about my pedigree, my connections, my social value. Give her time, love. She'll eventually see how wonderful you are. I promise you. Another promise that would turn out to be a beautiful lie. We got married 6 months later, in June, in a ceremony at the Whitmore family home. My family flew in from Mexico. My mother, my father, my sister Lucia, and my younger brother Mateo. It was the first time my 2 worlds collided, and the contrast was painful and obvious. My family was loud, warm, expressive. The Whitmores were cold, restrained, calculated. During the welcome cocktail the day before the wedding, I watched my mother try to hug Eleanor and how Eleanor stiffened like a marble statue, giving awkward pats on her back, as if dealing with an overly friendly animal. Your family is very expressive, commented Victoria as she watched my father animatedly telling a story, using his hands to emphasize every point. It's called being human, I replied, letting my irritation seep into my voice. You should try it sometime. The wedding was beautiful in aesthetic terms. Eleanor had hired the best event planner in New England. Perfect white flowers decorated every surface. A string quartet played classical music. Everything was elegant, expensive, flawless. But there was a coldness to it all. A lack of real joy that made even the most emotional moments feel empty, manufactured. When Richard and I exchanged vows, I saw genuine tears in my mother's eyes. I saw my father biting his lip, struggling to contain his emotion. On Richard's side, everyone seemed to be evaluating the ceremony as if it were a corporate merger, calculating the benefits of the transaction. The honeymoon was in Tuscany. 2 weeks of vineyards, incredible food, passionate sex. For those 14 perfect days, I could forget the disapproving looks and convince myself everything would be fine. That love would conquer all. How naive I was. Reality caught up with us as soon as we returned. Richard had his job at the family investment firm. I had left my position at the gallery, convinced by Richard that it would be better if I focused on establishing our home and on more flexible freelance projects that would allow me to travel with him when necessary. That was my first mistake, giving up my financial independence. We moved into a house in Back Bay, Boston, a property that had belonged to Richard's grandparents. It was beautiful, historically significant, and completely foreign to me. Eleanor had decorated every room with family heirlooms and portraits of Whitmore ancestors, who stared at me with eternal disapproval from their gilded frames. Obviously you'll want to redecorate some things, Richard said on the first day. Make it more yours. But every time I tried to change something, Eleanor would appear like a vengeful ghost with excuses about the historical value or family importance of the item in question. When I suggested painting the living room a warmer color than the institutional beige it was, Eleanor nearly had a heart attack. "That's the color this room has been since 1932, she said, horrified as if I had suggested burning the house down. "You can't just change it." "It's my house now," I responded, trying to stay calm, though my blood was boiling. "It's the Whitmore East Side house," she corrected me, with that tone she used to remind me of my place. "It's family heritage. Richard, explain to your wife the importance of maintaining these traditions." Richard, as always, chose the path of least resistance. "Maybe we could wait a bit before making big changes, love. Give everyone time to adjust." The living room remained beige, like everything in my life with the Whitmores. The first 2 years of marriage were a slow, systematic erosion of my identity. Little by little, I shed parts of myself to fit into the impossible mold the Whitmore family had of what Richard's wife should be. I stopped speaking Spanish in public because Eleanor had commented it was rude to speak a language others didn't understand. I stopped cooking Mexican food because George had once said the smell of cilantro seemed overwhelming to him. I stopped wearing bright colors in my clothing because Victoria had suggested that neutral tones were more appropriate for family events. I transformed into a pale, faded version of myself, and all the while, I told myself it was temporary. Once we had children, things would get better, that they would finally accept me when I gave them an heir. That was my second mistake, thinking my value to them depended on my biological utility. We started trying to get pregnant after our second anniversary. At first it was exciting, even romantic, but after 6 months without results, then a year, the pressure began to build like a pot about to explode. Eleanor started making increasingly aggressive comments. "Some women just aren't cut out for motherhood," she said once during a family dinner, looking directly at me with those cold eyes full of contempt. "It's a shame when that happens, especially when the family needs heirs." Richard took me to a fertility specialist at Massachusetts General Hospital. For a year and a half, my life became an endless cycle of medical appointments, invasive tests, hormones that made me feel like I was losing my mind, and the monthly humiliation of another negative pregnancy test. The doctors never found anything definitively wrong. I was healthy. Richard was healthy according to his tests. Unexplained infertility, they said, with those shrugs doctors give when they have no answers. Sometimes it just takes time. Be patient. But we didn't have time, not in Eleanor's mind, who began making increasingly cruel comments about my failure to give her grandchildren. Not in Richard's mind, who began spending more time at the office and less time at home with me. What I didn't know, what I couldn't see while I was undergoing painful treatments and crying every month when my period came, was that Richard had already met Amanda. Amanda Prescott, blonde, tall, thin as a model, with perfect skin and smile, daughter of a senator, Vassar graduate. Exactly the type of woman Eleanor had wanted for Richard from the beginning. But I didn't discover her existence until that Christmas night, that damn night that changed everything. December 25th. Snow fell softly on the windows of the Whitmore mansion as the clock struck 8 in the evening. The lights on the Christmas tree blinked in gold and silver tones, reflected in the champagne glasses held by the 32 guests gathered in the main hall. I was standing by the fireplace, in my blood-red dress I had carefully chosen that morning. Red, because it was Christmas. Red because I wanted to feel vibrant, alive, myself for once. I didn't know that color would be prophetic about the emotional massacre I was about to experience. Dinner had been tense but tolerable. Eleanor had made her usual comments about how my posture wasn't perfect, about how I had served the wine incorrectly, but I was used to it by then. I had developed thick skin after 6 years. Then came dessert time. Traditional fruit cake, gingerbread cookies, eggnog, everything perfectly prepared, perfectly presented, perfectly soulless. That's when Richard stood up. He softly tapped his glass with a knife, making that crystalline sound that normally precedes an emotional toast or a happy announcement. Everyone fell silent, turning their expectant faces toward him. I smiled, thinking maybe he was finally going to announce something good. Maybe he had gotten a new job. Maybe we had been accepted into some exclusive club. Maybe, just maybe, we were going to try to adopt. How stupid I was. "Family, friends," Richard began with that deep voice that once made me tremble with desire. "I want to thank you for being here on this special night. Christmas is a time for new beginnings, for cleaning the past and looking toward the future with clarity. Something in his tone made me shiver. He wasn't looking at me. His ice blue eyes were fixed on some point over my head as if I were invisible. That's why. Taking advantage of all of you, the people I love and respect most in the world, being gathered here, I want to make an important announcement. He made a dramatic pause. The air in the room became thick and heavy. I have decided to divorce Sophia. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds where my brain tried to process what I had just heard. 3 seconds where I thought maybe I had misheard, maybe it was a bad joke. Then the applause started. It wasn't timid or awkward applause. It was thunderous, jubilant applause, as if they had just announced the cure for cancer or the birth of the royal heir. Eleanor stood up with tears of genuine joy rolling down her carefully made-up cheeks. Victoria and Charlotte hugged each other, shouting, "Finally," and "Thank God," as if it were the best news of the year. Richard's brothers clinked their glasses in the air, spilling champagne on the $3,000 white linen tablecloth. The guests, all those family friends I had tried to impress for 6 years, joined with the applause with wide smiles and bright eyes. I remained motionless by the fireplace. The heat of the flames at my back was nothing compared to the hell burning inside my chest. My wine glass slipped from my numb fingers and shattered on the marble floor, but the sound was completely drowned out by the applause and congratulations raining down on Richard. "Darling," said Eleanor, approaching her son and kissing him on both cheeks as if he had just won the Nobel Prize. "It's the best decision you've made in years. I am so incredibly proud of you. You've finally come back to us." Richard smiled, accepting hugs and back pats. He hadn't even looked at me since he uttered those words. It was as if I no longer existed in the room, as if I were old furniture they had finally gotten rid of. "Richard?" My voice came out as a strangled whisper. No one heard me, or maybe everyone decided to ignore me, as they had been doing for 6 years. "A toast," shouted George, raising his glass enthusiastically, "to my son who has finally regained his sanity, for freeing himself from this unfortunate situation that has plagued our family for too long." Everyone raised their glasses. 32 people toasting my destruction. 32 pairs of eyes avoiding me while celebrating the end of my marriage as if it were Independence Day. "Richard," I repeated, this time louder, with a voice I vaguely recognized as mine but tinged with something dark and desperate. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were cold, completely empty of any trace of the man I had fallen in love with 6 years earlier. "Is this a joke?" "It's not a joke, Sophia," he said with a chilling calm, as if discussing the weather. "The papers are already prepared. My lawyer will send them to you tomorrow morning. I suggest you hire a good one. You're going to need it." Nervous laughter filled the room. Someone made a comment about finally setting things right. Someone else mentioned something about returning to normalcy. "But why?" I asked, hating how my voice sounded so small, so broken. "What have I done?" Charlotte let out a cruel laugh that echoed off the walls. "What have you done? A better question would be, what haven't you done, dear? You haven't given this family an heir. You don't fit into our social circles. You're not from our class. You're not our type. The list is endless." "Enough," I said, and something in my voice, something dangerous and sharp, made everyone quiet down for a moment. I felt the humiliation begin to transform into pure rage, like boiling lava in my veins. "Richard, we've been married for 6 years, 6 years of my life. If you have problems with me, if you want a divorce, we should talk about it in private. This is inhuman." "Inhuman?" Eleanor repeated with disdain, stepping toward me like a predator approaching its prey. "Do you know what's inhuman, Sophia? A Mexican gold digger trapping my son with lies and manipulation, keeping him tied down for 6 years without giving him the only thing that really matters, a pure-blood Whitmore heir." There it was, the naked truth that had always been there, barely hidden under thin layers of forced courtesy. To them I had never been enough, because my skin was darker, because my surname ended in a vowel, because my family didn't have a family tree tracing back to the signing of some important colonial document. "Pure blood," I repeated slowly, feeling nausea rise in my throat. "Do you hear what your mother is saying, Richard? Are you going to let her talk like that? Are you going to stand there while she calls me a gold digger and talks about blood purity as if we were in the damn 1930s? Richard shrugged with an indifference that hurt more than any insult. She's right. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. I was confused, fascinated by something different, something exotic, but now I see things with total clarity. I need a wife who understands my world, my family, my responsibilities, someone appropriate. Your world, I said slowly, feeling each word like poison on my tongue. Do you mean this world of horrible people who applaud when you humiliate your wife on Christmas Day? This is the world you value so much? Watch how you speak about my family. His voice became threatening, and for the first time in 6 years I saw something genuine in his eyes, pure contempt. Or what? You're going to divorce me? I laughed, and the sound that came from my throat had no humor in it. It was bitter, broken, dangerous. Oh wait, you already did, in front of 30 witnesses. At Christmas dinner. How elegant, Richard. What class do you have? You are truly worthy of your surname. Victoria stepped forward with a venomous smile on her perfectly red painted lips. You heard my brother. The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow. I strongly suggest you sign without making a scene. The settlement will be generous, considering you contributed absolutely nothing valuable to the marriage. Generous? My voice rose an octave. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I left my career for this marriage. I left my family. I left my country. I spent 6 years trying to be the perfect wife for a man who was apparently waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate me publicly with an audience. Dramatic to the end, Charlotte murmured with that condescending tone she had perfected. Several people laughed, finding humor in my pain. I looked around the room. All those faces I had seen at birthdays, anniversaries, and weekly dinners for 6 years. None showed a hint of empathy. Some looked frankly amused, as if enjoying an especially entertaining show. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment for years, savoring it in advance. You know what, Richard? I said, straightening my back, feeling something hard and cold settle in my chest, where my heart had been. Go ahead, let's get divorced, but I'm not going to sign your papers tomorrow. I'm not going to accept your insulting settlement. I'm going to hire the best damn divorce lawyer money can buy, and I'm going to make sure every person in this city, in this state, knows exactly what kind of family the Whitmores are. Eleanor stepped toward me, her face contorting in fury. Are you threatening us, girl? No, I responded, holding her gaze without blinking, feeling something fierce and powerful awakening within me. It's a promise from the Mexican gold digger you completely underestimated. I walked toward the main door, ignoring the murmurs that began to fly behind me. I heard someone call me bitch, quietly. I heard someone else laugh and say, she finally shows her true nature. I didn't turn around. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me react. My hands trembled as I searched for my coat in the closet. Richard appeared behind me, and I could feel his presence like a dark shadow. Sophia, wait. His voice had lost that cold tone. Now it sounded almost nervous. Good. He should be nervous. Now you want to talk? I turned to him, holding my coat like a shield. After destroying me in front of your entire family and their rich, horrible friends. Don't be dramatic. I'm giving you a dignified exit. The settlement I'm offering is more than generous for someone in your situation. Dignified? I looked at him with total disbelief. You call what you just did dignified? Richard, you just announced divorce to me like the outcome of a baseball game. There's nothing dignified about that. Look, Sophia. He ran a hand through his perfectly combed blonde hair, a gesture I once found charming and now only pathetic. This doesn't have to be ugly. Sign the papers, accept the money, and we can all move on with our lives. We can be adults about this. All of us? Something in the way he said it made me pause. There was weight in that word, a hidden meaning. Is there someone else in your life, Richard? Is that why this is happening now? The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. I saw his eyes shift, unable to hold my gaze. How long? I asked, feeling a new wave of pain mixed with the rage already boiling in my chest. That doesn't matter now. It's not relevant to— How long? I shouted, and my voice echoed in the marble foyer. 2 years, he finally admitted, as if the words cost him physical effort. But it's not what you think. 2 years, I interrupted, feeling my mind process the information like an overheating computer. 2 fucking years. When I was going to those damn fertility clinics 3 times a week, when I was undergoing painful treatments, when I was blaming myself for not getting pregnant, when I cried in the bathroom every month. This entire time you had a mistress. Don't call her that. She's not. What do you want me to call her? Your side project? Your secret hobby? Your backup plan? Her name is Amanda, he said, and there was something in his tone, something soft and protective that he had never used with me. Amanda Prescott, and she's pregnant. The world stopped. I literally felt as if time froze around me, as if every molecule of air had solidified. Amanda, pregnant. The words bounced in my skull like stray bullets, destroying everything in their path. So that's why, I said slowly, feeling a strange calm descend upon me. That's why today's announcement. That's why the celebration. You need to be free before your child is born. You need your heir to be legitimate. Our son? He corrected, and there was pride in his voice. Pride he had never shown when talking about the possibility of having children with me. Amanda and I are going to have a son, a true Whitmore heir, someone who actually belongs to this family. Legitimate? I laughed bitterly. He's a bastard conceived while you were married to me, Richard. That's literally the textbook definition of illegitimate. Not if we divorce before he's born. That's why I need you to sign the papers quickly. Sophia, the baby is due in April. 4 months. We need to have this settled by then. April? 4 months. She was already 5 months pregnant. Does your family know? Does Eleanor know about Amanda and the baby? Of course they know. In fact, my mother introduced us. Amanda is the Senator Prescott's daughter. Exactly the kind of connection our family needs. I felt like I was going to faint. Everything had been orchestrated. Everything had been planned. Is she here tonight? Is your pregnant mistress in this house while you were announcing our divorce? She's in the study with my father and some select guests, he admitted without a hint of shame. I thought it would be best to keep her away from the main dinner until after the announcement. I didn't want things to get uncomfortable prematurely. Uncomfortable, I repeated, feeling hysterical laughter bubbling in my throat. Your pregnant mistress is literally in the same house where you just announced our divorce in front of your entire family, and you were worried things might get uncomfortable. Richard, you're not just a son of a bitch, you're a masterpiece of a son of a bitch. Look, I know this is hard for you, but… Hard? I cut him off, feeling all the contained rage of 6 years finally find its voice. Richard, you just destroyed me. You just humiliated me in front of 30 people. You just confirmed you cheated on me for 2 years while I was blaming myself for not being able to have children. And now I find out your whore is pregnant and waiting in the other room like a Christmas present. You have no fucking idea what I'm feeling right now. You'll get over it. You're strong, Sophia. You always have been. And with the divorce settlement money, you'll be able to remake your life. You can go back to Mexico, get a job there, find someone more appropriate for you. Appropriate for me? The words came out like poison. You mean someone from my class? Someone from my race? Someone who won't contaminate the precious Whitmore blood? He didn't respond. His silence said it all. You know what the saddest thing about all this is? I looked directly in the eyes, wanting him to remember this moment, wanting him to see exactly what he had destroyed, that I really believed you loved me. That all this time, all those nights when you whispered to me that we were soulmates, all those promises of growing old together, all those moments when you looked at me as if I were the most precious thing in the world, I really thought they were true. How stupid I was. For a moment I saw a flash of something in his eyes. Guilt? Remorse? Humanity? But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced by that cold mask of indifference. People change, Sophia. Feelings change. I have changed. I'm 38 years old. I need to establish my legacy. I need to secure my family's future. Amanda can give me that. You couldn't. Couldn't or wouldn't, I said quietly, feeling the pieces finally fit together. How many of those times at the fertility clinic were real, Richard? How many times did you actually try versus the times you were just acting to keep up appearances? How many of those treatments were a farce while you were already planning your life with Amanda? He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence, his inability to look me in the eye, gave me all the confirmation I needed. I took my coat and purse. See you in court, Richard. And I guarantee, I swear on everything holy, it's not going to be as simple as you and your family think. Sophia, don't make this harder than it has to be. Be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated, feeling a cold smile form on my lips. I spent 6 years being reasonable, being accommodating, being small and quiet and acceptable. It's over. The reasonable Sophia died tonight, Richard. The one who remains is going to be your worst nightmare. I left that house feeling the cold of the Massachusetts night piercing my bones like ice knives. The snow had intensified, covering my car with a perfect white layer, as if trying to hide everything, to make it all disappear. I sat in the driver's seat, trembling violently. It wasn't from the cold, it was from the adrenaline, the shock, the rage, the pain, all the emotions that had been contained for years finally exploding inside me like a nuclear bomb. I took out my phone with trembling hands and dialed the only number I knew would answer no matter the time, no matter how late, no matter what. Sophia, my sister Lucia's voice answered on the second ring, immediately alert. Why are you calling me at 11 at night? Did something happen? Are you okay? Lucy, my voice finally broke. All the tears I had been holding back spilling like a broken river. I need to come home. I need to get out of here. I need help. What happened? What did that son of a bitch do? And there, sitting in my car as snow fell around me, as the lights of the Whitmore mansion shone behind me like the lights of a fancy hell, I told my sister everything. The applause, the mistress, pregnancy, the 2 years of deception, the calculated humiliation, everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Lucia said, with a voice so cold and dangerous it made me feel better immediately. Okay, listen to me carefully, Sophia. You're going to go to a hotel. Right now. Don't go back to that house. First thing tomorrow, I'm on a flight to Boston. And then we're going to destroy those sons of bitches. Do you hear me? We are going to destroy them. And at that moment, sitting in my car on the most horrible Christmas night of my life, I decided, the Whitmores thought they had destroyed me. They thought the applause would mark my end, my complete defeat. But they were wrong. Because what they didn't know is that they didn't destroy Sophia Martinez that night. They awakened her. And she was going to be their worst nightmare. I drove to the hotel nearest the airport in an almost autopilot state. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The city lights passed like blurry smears through my tears. The snow kept falling, turning Boston's streets into a white, hostile landscape. The hotel was one of those generic chain places, the kind where no one asks questions. The receptionist looked at me curiously when I arrived at 11:30 at night in my party dress and swollen eyes, but she just gave me the key to room 214 without comment. The room was small, impersonal, with that smell of disinfectant and anonymity all cheap hotels have. But it was mine. It was a space where the Whitmores couldn't reach me, where I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't, where I could finally fall apart without an audience judging me. I took off the red dress and threw it in a corner. I wanted to burn it, destroy it, erase any evidence that that night had existed. I showered under water so hot my skin turned red, trying to wash off the humiliation, the pain, the feeling of having been used and discarded like trash. But no matter how hard I scrubbed, I couldn't clean what I felt inside. I got out of the shower and looked at myself in the foggy mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, 34 years old. Red, swollen eyes, pale skin, lips cracked from biting them so much. This was me without the perfect makeup, without the elegant hairstyle, without the mask I had worn for 6 years. And there was something liberating in that nakedness. I put on the hotel robe and sat on the bed, hugging my knees to my chest. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages from Lucia asking if I had arrived safely. Messages from my mother asking what had happened, why I wasn't answering. A message from my father that simply said, "We're with you, Mija, always." But there were other messages too. 3 from Richard, 5 from Eleanor, 2 from Victoria, all saying basically the same thing. I was being dramatic. I needed to calm down. We needed to talk like civilized adults. I deleted them all without responding. There was a message from an unknown number that caught my attention. "It's Andrew Whitmore. Please call me. It's important." Andrew, Richard's younger brother. The one who always stayed quiet at family dinners. The one who never participated in the cruel comments. The one who had once looked at me with something like compassion when Eleanor made me cry during Thanksgiving because I served the turkey incorrectly. What could he want? I dialed his number. He answered immediately. Sophia, thank you for calling. His voice sounded tired, defeated. I know it's very late. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you about what happened tonight. Why? My voice came out harsher than I intended. Are you coming to defend them? To tell me I deserve what they did to me? No, quite the opposite, he paused. Sophia, what they did tonight was unforgivable, and I was there. I sat there and said nothing, which makes me almost as guilty as them, but I want to help you. Why? Because I'm sick of this family, sick of the cruelty, sick of being an accomplice. What I saw tonight, that applause, made me realize I don't want to be like them, and if I can help you make them pay for what they did to you, I'm going to do it. I felt a spark of hope, small but real. What do you know? Everything. I know Richard has been with Amanda for over 2 years, not 2 like he told you. The whole family knows. In fact, Mom introduced them. Amanda is Senator Prescott's daughter, exactly the kind of political connection Mom has always wanted for the family. My heart raced. Are you saying Eleanor orchestrated all this? Eleanor, Dad, everyone. They even hired a private investigator to follow you for the past 2 years, looking for something they could use against you in the divorce. They wanted to find evidence you were cheating or stealing money or anything that justified kicking you out without giving you anything. But they didn't find anything. Because there's nothing. You're the only decent person in this whole damn story, Sophia, and they deserve to pay for what they did to you. Why are you telling me all this? What do you gain? Your family will cut you off when they find out. There was a long silence. Then let them cut me off. I don't care anymore. I've spent 34 years being the invisible son, the one everyone ignores, the one who's supposed to be grateful for the crumbs they throw me. If helping you means losing my place in this rotten family, it's a price I'm willing to pay. We talked for almost 2 hours. Andrew gave me names, dates, places. He told me about private conversations where Eleanor had openly talked about getting rid of the Mexican woman, about emails between Richard and Amanda I could get my hands on, about tax-advantaged bank accounts where Richard had been moving money over the past year preparing for the divorce. It was a gold mine of information. It was ammunition. I'll testify to you if you need, Andrew said before hanging up. In court, before lawyers, anywhere. I'll tell the truth about this family, and to hell with the consequences. When I hung up, I sat on the hotel bed feeling something I hadn't felt in hours. Hope. The Whitmores thought they had destroyed me, but they had just given me exactly what I needed to destroy them. Lucia arrived the next day at 10 in the morning. When I opened my hotel room door and saw her standing there with her suitcase, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket, her dark hair pulled into a high ponytail, I burst into tears again. That son of a bitch were her first words as she hugged me tightly. That damn coward son of a bitch. I'm going to destroy him, Sophie. I swear to God. Lucia was 32, 2 years younger than me. She was a corporate lawyer at a major firm in Mexico City. She had her own apartment, a BMW she loved more than most people, and absolute zero tolerance for cowardly behavior or injustice. She was everything I had stopped being in my attempt to please the Whitmores. She was strong, direct, unapologetic about taking up space in the world. Have you eaten anything? She asked, entering the room and assessing the situation with her lawyer's eye. I'm not hungry. I don't care. We're going to eat. You can't fight a war on an empty stomach. She threw clean clothes at me that she had brought in her suitcase. Get dressed. We have a lot to do. Half an hour later, we were at a diner near the hotel, sitting at a table by the window. Lucia ordered coffee, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and enough food to feed a small army. Okay, she said, taking out a notebook and pen, going into full lawyer mode. We need a plan. First, you need the best divorce lawyer in Massachusetts. Someone who won't be intimidated by the Whitmore name or their money. Do you know anyone? I did a search last night. There's a lawyer, Rebecca Goldman. She has a reputation for destroying rich men in divorce court. Perfect. We contact her today. Second, you need to document absolutely everything. Every bank account, every property, every investment Richard has. If he's been moving money, We need to find it. Third, you need witnesses. Is there anyone who has witnessed his family's treatment of you? Andrew, Richard's younger brother, contacted me last night. He says he wants to help me, that he's going to testify about everything. Lucia's eyes lit up. Really? A family witness? That's pure gold, Sophie. What else did he tell you? I told her everything Andrew had revealed. As I spoke, I saw Lucia's expression shift from surprise to rage to cold determination. Those sons of bitches, she said when I finished. They planned everything. It was all a conspiracy to get rid of you in the cruelest way possible. Sophia, with this information, you're not just going to win the divorce, you're going to destroy them financially and publicly. I don't know if I can do this, Lucy, I admitted, feeling the weight of what was to come. A legal battle against Richard, and the entire machinery of money and power of the Whitmores. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be public. My entire marriage exposed before strangers. Lucia took my hands across the table, looking directly into my eyes with that intensity that had intimidated more than one opponent in boardrooms. Listen to me carefully, Sophia. I've known you since you were 2 years old and you pulled my hair to get my attention. You are the strongest person I know. You left everything, your family, your country, to chase your dreams in New York. You got your master's while working 2 jobs. You learned English perfectly. You built a career in a competitive field. You're not going to let these racist, cruel gringos destroy you. Do you hear me? But I'm scared. Of course you're scared. Only idiots aren't scared before a war. But fear isn't going to stop you, because the alternative is letting them walk all over you. Letting them get away with it. Accepting $500,000 miserable dollars, and disappearing silently like the good Mexican they always wanted you to be. And the Sophia I know would never allow that. She was right. Of course she was right. The idea of simply signing Richard's papers and disappearing made me feel physically ill. After 6 years of making myself small, of accepting insults, of swallowing my pride, I finally had the chance to fight. And I wasn't going to waste it. Okay, I said, feeling something hard and determined to settle in my chest. Let's do it. Let's destroy those sons of bitches. Lucia smiled, and there was something a little terrifying in that smile. Now you're talking. Now eat. You're going to need your strength. After breakfast, we went back to the hotel and Lucia spent the next hours doing what she does best. Organizing, investigating, executing. She called contacts in the United States, asked for lawyer recommendations, investigated backgrounds. I sat with my laptop and started documenting everything. I wrote a detailed timeline of my marriage, every racist comment, every humiliation, every instance of cruelty from the Whitmore family. I compiled all the emails and text messages I had saved. I made a list of all the properties and accounts I knew about. It was painful to relieve 6 years of mistreatment. Each memory was like opening an old wound, but it was also cathartic. For the first time I saw my marriage clearly, without the rose-colored glasses of love or the desperation to be accepted. And what I saw was systematic abuse. Not physical, but equally damaging. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, racism, gaslighting, gradual isolation from my family and culture, calculated erosion of my self-esteem and identity. When I finished, I had 30 pages of documentation, 30 pages of evidence that my marriage had been an elegant prison. Look at this, said Lucia, showing me her laptop. She had found Rebecca Goldman's profile. I'm 58 years old. I am a Harvard Law graduate, had handled some of the biggest and ugliest divorces in Massachusetts, had a reputation for being aggressive, ruthless, and successful. She's perfect, said Lucia. I sent her an email detailing your case. She replied 10 minutes ago. She wants to meet with us tomorrow at 9 in the morning. So quickly? She said your case is exactly the type she loves. I quote, "Rich men who think they can discard their wives like garbage need to learn hard lessons." For the first time since Christmas dinner, I smiled. A small smile, but real. Rebecca Goldman's office was on the 20th floor of a modern building overlooking Boston Harbor. The walls were decorated with photos of her with various politicians, celebrities, and what seemed to be satisfied clients. There was a framed article from Boston Magazine titled "The Lawyer Wealthy Men Fear." Rebecca in person was more intimidating than her photo. Short, perfectly styled gray hair, impeccable black pantsuit, green eyes that seemed to see right through lies and bullshit. "Sophia," she said, extending her hand with a firm handshake. Thank you for coming, and you must be Lucia. Your email was very detailed. I appreciate that. We sat in her office, in leather chairs facing her massive desk. Rebecca opened a folder she already had prepared. Before we begin, I need you both to know something, she said, looking directly at me. The Whitmores are a powerful family in this city. They have money, connections, influence. They will fight dirty. They will try to destroy your reputation. They will make your life miserable. If you decide to go forward with this, you need to be absolutely certain you are prepared for war, because that's what this will be, a war. I'm prepared, I said, surprised by how firm my voice sounded. Good, then tell me everything. And when I say everything, I mean every sordid detail, every humiliating moment, every piece of evidence. I can't help you if I don't know exactly what we're working with. For the next 3 hours I told her my entire story, from meeting Richard in that art gallery to Christmas dinner, the racist comments, the fertility treatments, the infidelity, Amanda and her pregnancy, the applause, everything. Rebecca took notes on her laptop, her expression remaining neutral and professional until I finished. Then she leaned back in her chair, putting her hands together under her chin. Okay, she said finally. Here's what we have: provable adultery with evidence of a pregnant mistress who was introduced to your husband by his own mother. Documented emotional cruelty, systematic racial discrimination, invasive medical treatments you endured while he was cheating on you. A private investigator hired you to survey you. And best of all, a public divorce announcement specifically designed to humiliate you with 32 witnesses who applauded. Sophia, your husband and his family just handed us the most solid case I've seen in years. What does that mean exactly? I asked, feeling hope growing in my chest. It means Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, not community property, but the judge has considerable discretion in how to divide assets. And when there's clear evidence of marital misconduct, especially adultery, that can significantly influence the judge's decision. Furthermore, the fact that you gave up your career to support his, that you were subjected to invasive medical treatments while he was cheating on you, and that his family has a documentable history of racial discrimination against you, all of that plays enormously in our favor. How much could we get? Asked Lucia, always practical. Rebecca smiled, and there was something predatory in that smile. Richard Whitmore has an estimated net worth of $50 million. Not counting the family trusts and multiple properties. He'll probably offer $500,000, maybe $1 million if he's generous, thinking it's more than enough. He already offered $500,000, I said. The papers arrived yesterday. Of course he did. It's a calculated insult. $500,000 for 6 years of marriage from a woman who left her career, her country, her family. It's obscene. Rebecca leaned forward. We are going to ask for $20 million in asset division, plus an additional $4 million in compensation for emotional distress and mental anguish, plus the Back Bay house, valued at approximately $4 million, plus alimony of $50,000 per month for 10 years. I was breathless. 20 million? Is that realistic? We'll probably end up negotiating somewhere between 8 and 12 million plus the house and reduced alimony. But you never start a negotiation from a weak position. We're going to war, Sophia, and we're going to win. And Andrew? Asked Lucia, the brother who wants to testify. An internal family witness is incredibly valuable, especially one willing to confirm the conspiracy to end the marriage and the systematic racism. I need to meet him as soon as possible. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning strategy. Rebecca explained the legal process, probable timelines, the tactics Richard's lawyers would likely use. She had me sign a representation contract and a confidentiality agreement. One more thing, she said as we were about to leave. The Whitmores will counterattack hard. They will try to paint you as a gold digger. They will question your character. They will try to find anything in your past they can use against you. We need to be prepared for that. Is there anything at all they can use? I thought carefully. No. I came to the United States legally on a student visa. I obtained permanent residency through my work before I met Richard. I have no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. My taxes have always been perfectly in order. I haven't done anything questionable in my life. Past relationships? 2 boyfriends before Richard. Both relationships ended amicably. One is now happily married with children. The other lives in Spain. We haven't even spoken in years. Drugs? Alcohol? Mental health issues? I've never touched drugs. Not even marijuana. I drink socially, nothing excessive. And no, I have no history of mental health issues, although I probably should after 6 years with the Whitmores. Rebecca nodded, looking satisfied. You are the perfect client, Sophia. Now let me do my job. And you, in the meantime, don't speak to anyone from the Whitmore family. Don't respond to messages. Don't accept calls. Nothing. All communication goes through me from now on. We left her office feeling, for the first time since that horrible Christmas night, that I had a real chance, that I wasn't defenseless, that I had power. See, said Lucia as we walked through the snowy streets of Boston toward where we had parked. I told you. You're not helpless. You have options, and you're going to win this. It's going to be horrible, Lucy. A public battle. Everything exposed. Let it be horrible. Let them try to justify a judge why they applauded when your husband humiliated you at Christmas. Let them explain the 2 years of adultery. You're going to come out of this, sister, and you're going to come out winning. Richard's official divorce papers arrived on January 2nd, delivered by courier to the hotel where I was still staying. I opened them with Lucia and Rebecca present at a meeting we had specifically scheduled for this moment. The document was exactly what Rebecca had predicted. $500,000 signing a confidentiality agreement, committing me to never speak publicly about the marriage or the circumstances of the divorce. And I had to vacate the Back Bay house in 30 days. $500,000, I said, feeling fresh anger bubbling. That's what 6 years of my life are worth to him, less than $100,000 per year. It's a deliberate insult, said Rebecca, reviewing the papers with an expert eye. And the confidentiality agreement is particularly offensive. They basically want to buy your silence for nothing. But here's the good news. This document demonstrates exactly the arrogance that's going to destroy them in court. What do we do? Asked Lucia. We prepare our counterclaim, and it's going to be spectacular. Rebecca smiled. Give me 48 hours. During those 2 days, I met with Andrew in secret at a cafe far from the neighborhoods where the Whitmores or their friends might be. He arrived looking gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes, and the expression of someone who hadn't slept well in days. My mother knows I contacted you, he said after ordering coffee. I don't know how, but she knows. She called me yesterday. She told me that if I continue helping you, I'll be dead to the family. No inheritance, no trust, nothing. Andrew, if this is going to cause problems for you. No, he interrupted firmly. I've already made my decision. Screw them and their money. I've spent 34 years being invisible in that family, accepting crumbs, watching them treat people like garbage. No more. I'm going to testify, Sophia. I'm going to tell the truth about everything. We recorded his testimony. Rebecca interviewed him for 3 hours, documenting every conversation he had witnessed, every racist comment, every detail of the conspiracy to introduce Richard to Amanda. Andrew had emails. He had text messages. He had specific dates and places. It was gold standard evidence. With this, said Rebecca after Andrew left, we can prove not just adultery but premeditated conspiracy to end your marriage. We can demonstrate systematic racism. We can paint a picture of calculated emotional abuse. The Whitmores are screwed. On January 15th, Rebecca filed our official counterclaim. It demanded $20 million in asset division, an additional $4 million in compensation for emotional damage, the Back Bay house, alimony of $50,000 per month for 10 years, and a public apology from Richard admitting his adultery and acknowledging the cruelty of how he had announced the divorce. The response from Richard's lawyers arrived 48 hours later in a 10-page letter that basically accused us of being absurdly greedy and opportunistic. They threatened to make the divorce a long, painful, and publicly humiliating process if we didn't accept their original offer. Perfect, said Rebecca when she read me the letter over the phone. Let it be long and painful. Every day that passes, Amanda is more pregnant with a technically illegitimate child. Every day that passes is more negative publicity for the perfect Whitmores. Time is on our side. Sophia, don't worry. And so, the war began in earnest. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of depositions, preliminary hearings, and public relations battles. The Whitmores hired not only their own lawyers but an entire public relations firm to handle the public narrative. Articles began appearing in local newspapers about the bitter divorce between respected businessman Richard Whitmore and his foreign wife, now demanding exorbitant sums. Gossip blogs wrote pieces painting me as a gold digger who had trapped a wealthy man and was now trying to destroy him financially. The comments on social media were brutal. They called me everything: gold digger, Mexican whore, trash, much more vulgar and racist terms I don't want to repeat. There were days when I didn't want to leave my hotel room, when the weight of being publicly vilified was almost unbearable. But Rebecca constantly reminded me, this is exactly what they wanted. They wanted you to feel small, ashamed, willing to accept anything just to make this end. Don't give them that satisfaction. Hold your head high. So we began our own campaign. Rebecca contacted investigative journalists, offering exclusive interviews where I could tell my side of the story unfiltered. I appeared on 2 popular podcasts about high-profile divorces and toxic relationships. I gave an extensive interview to a major Boston newspaper where I spoke openly about the racism I had faced, Richard's systematic infidelity, and the calculated cruelty of his family. Public opinion has begun to shift. People started asking uncomfortable questions. Why exactly did the family applaud at the Christmas dinner? Why had Richard waited until his mistress was pregnant to ask for a divorce? Why had the Whitmores, who presented themselves as respectable pillars of the community, treated one of their own so cruelly? The biggest blow came when Andrew gave his own interview on local television, publicly confirming everything I had said and adding devastating details I didn't even fully know. My family operates under the fundamental belief that money and the last name make them inherently better than other people, Andrew said, looking directly into the camera with raw honesty. But what they did to Sophia, the years of racial and emotional abuse, the conspiracy to destroy her marriage while she was suffering medical treatments, thinking the problem was her, that shows all that money can't buy, even a gram of basic human decency. The Whitmores were furious. They tried to discredit Andrew, calling him resentful, mentally unstable, a family failure, but the damage was done. The perfect mask they had maintained for generations was cracking in ways they couldn't repair, and everyone could see the rot underneath. The situation came to a head in March, when we had our first real hearing in court. It was there that everything exploded in ways no one, not even Rebecca with all her experience, had completely anticipated. Richard was sitting with his 3 expensive lawyers at a table, looking perfectly composed in his designer suit that probably cost $5,000. Eleanor and George were in the public gallery along with Victoria and Charlotte. Amanda, noticeably pregnant now, in a dress that screamed, "Look at us, we're the perfect family," was also there, which I found incredibly tasteless but completely predictable. The judge, a 60-year-old woman named the Honorable Patricia Morrison, known for not tolerating nonsense in her court, reviewed the documents before her with an expression that grew more and more severe with each page she turned. "Mr. Whitmore," she said finally, taking off her reading glasses and looking directly at him with eyes that could freeze fire, "can you explain to me why you thought it was appropriate to announce your intention to divorce during a family Christmas dinner in front of dozens of witnesses, without informing your wife of your intentions beforehand?" One of Richard's lawyers stood up quickly. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the personal circumstances of how my client chose to communicate his decision are—" "I asked your client, not you, counsel," Judge Morrison interrupted in a tone that brooked no argument. "Sit down. Mr. Whitmore, I asked you a direct question. I expect a direct answer." Richard stood up, clearing his throat, and I could see a bead of sweat forming on his forehead. "Your Honor, I had been considering divorce for some time. The family gathering seemed an appropriate moment to announce an important decision that affected everyone." "An appropriate moment?" repeated the judge, her voice dripping with absolute disbelief. "Did it seem appropriate to publicly humiliate your wife on Christmas Day, one of the most significant holidays of the year? And according to the testimony here, you're telling me your family applauded this announcement." "They were reacting emotionally to the news that I was finally making a difficult decision I had been postponing." Richard was starting to sweat visibly now, which gave me a small but satisfying spark of pleasure. "I see." Judge Morrison looked at her papers again, and I could see her jaw tightening. "And I see here in the evidence presented that, during this marriage, while your wife was undergoing painful and invasive fertility treatments, you were maintaining an extramarital relationship that has resulted in a pregnancy. Is that correct?" Your Honor, the exact chronology of my client's relationship with Miss Prescott is complex. Mr. Whitmore, the judge raised her hand, effectively silencing the lawyer without even looking at him. Again, I'm asking you directly, not your legal team. Is it correct that you maintained a romantic and sexual relationship with another woman while your wife was undergoing fertility treatments, under the belief that you were trying to conceive a child together? Richard looked at his lawyers, who nodded slightly, resigned. Yes, Your Honor, that is technically correct. I see. And you, Mrs. Martinez, the judge turned to me with an expression considerably softer. State in your written testimony that you gave up your career as an art curator to support your husband's career, and that you were subjected to constant pressure, discriminatory comments, and systematic racism from your in-laws. Can you elaborate briefly on that? I stood up, feeling my legs tremble, but my voice came out firmer than I expected. Your Honor, during the entire 6 years of our marriage, the Whitmore family made it clear in multiple direct and indirect ways that I was not welcome. They made constant comments about my Mexican background, questioned my worth to the family based on my race and social class, and when I couldn't get pregnant, they treated me as if I were defective or inferior. All of this is documented in detailed testimonies we have submitted, including the testimony of Andrew Whitmore, the defendant's brother. I have read it all carefully, said Judge Morrison, and her tone had become even more severe. And frankly, Mr. Whitmore, what I see here is a clear and documented pattern of cruel, calculated, discriminatory, and completely unacceptable behavior. This court does not take adultery lightly under any circumstances, but especially when combined with the type of systematic emotional abuse that is exhaustively documented in this case. One of Richard's lawyers tried to interject desperately. Your Honor, with all possible respect, the term abuse is extremely strong and potentially defamatory. I am done hearing from you for now. Counsel, the judge cut him off in a tone that allowed no argument. Here is exactly what is going to happen. We will proceed with this divorce on terms this court deems fair and equitable. And Mr. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you reconsider the ridiculously insulting and low offer you have made to your wife. This court will personally ensure that she receives fair and adequate compensation not only for the marital assets she is legally entitled to, but for the emotional, psychological, and professional damage you and your family have caused her over 6 years. Do I make myself perfectly clear to everyone? It was at that exact moment that Eleanor, who had been sitting silently trembling with contained rage, finally exploded. She stood up abruptly, her face red with fury. This is an absolute outrage, she shouted, her voice echoing in the courtroom. That woman is a manipulative gold digger who trapped my son with lies. She doesn't deserve a single cent of our family money. Madam, Judge Morrison banged her gavel forcefully. Sit down immediately or I will have you removed from my court. I will not be quiet while that foreigner tries to steal my family's fortune. Eleanor was completely out of control now, all her perfect composure finally breaking to reveal the pure hatred underneath. You people don't understand. She planned it all from the beginning. She got into his life deliberately, manipulated him with her exoticism, and now she's trying to destroy him. It's a disgrace for this court to allow this. Eleanor, for God's sake, shut up, shouted Richard, his face pale with absolute horror, but it was too late. Mrs. Whitmore, Judge Morrison's voice was like cutting ice. You have just made a shameful spectacle of yourself in my court, and what is infinitely more important for this case, you have just confirmed exactly the type of discriminatory racial hostility Mrs. Martinez has been describing in her testimony. Officer, please immediately escort Mrs. Whitmore out of this courtroom. If she resists, arrest her for contempt. 2 officers approached Eleanor, who briefly resisted, trying to pull away, before finally allowing herself to be guided toward the door. She shot pure venom with her eyes as she passed by me, and for a moment I thought she would try to physically attack me. Judge Morrison waited until the door closed behind Eleanor, before turning to Richard with an expression of absolute disgust. Mr. Whitmore, your mother has just seriously and possibly fatally damaged your case. I strongly suggest to you and your legal team that you have an extremely serious conversation about settling this out of court generously and quickly, because if we continue down this litigation path, I personally guarantee that the final outcome will not be at all favorable for you or your family. We will reconvene in exactly 2 weeks. Until then, I expect to see a revised and substantially improved offer that reflects the complete reality of this situation. Court dismissed. We left the courtroom in absolute silence until we reached the elevator. Then Rebecca burst into a triumphant smile. That was better. Infinitely better than I could ever have hoped or planned for, she said, practically beaming. Eleanor basically destroyed their own case. No judge in this state is going to be understanding or generous with them after witnessing that kind of explicit racist behavior in court. She was right. 3 days later, barely 72 hours after the hearing, Richard's lawyers contacted Rebecca with a radically different new offer. $8 million in cash, the full Back Bay house, valued at $4 million, and alimony of $30,000 per month for 8 years. It's significantly better, admitted Rebecca, as we reviewed the documents in her office, but it's still not enough considering everything you have documented. We can get more if you're willing to keep fighting. The question is, do you want to stay in this war, or do you want to end this now and start rebuilding your life? I thought about it all that night. I could keep fighting, dragging this out for additional months, exposing every remaining dirty secret of the Whitmores to ruthless public scrutiny. Or I could take what was on the table, which honestly was more money than I had ever imagined having in my entire life, and start the process of rebuilding. Negotiate for $9 million in cash and $35,000 monthly for 8 years, I told Rebecca the next day. If they accept exactly that, we close the deal immediately. They agreed in less than 24 hours. The complete divorce settlement was finalized officially on April 11th, exactly 1 week before Amanda gave birth to a boy they named Richard Whitmore Jr. Richard got his pure-blood heir. I got my absolute freedom and enough money to never have to depend financially on anyone else for the rest of my life. I spent the first 3 full months after the divorce in Mexico City with my family. I desperately needed to reconnect with whom I had been before becoming Mrs. Richard Whitmore. I needed to remember my mother tongue, my vibrant culture, the fundamental parts of myself I had buried so deep for 6 years. I had almost completely forgotten them. My mother cried when she saw me at the airport, not tears of sadness but of deep, genuine relief. I thought I had lost you forever, she said, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. I thought that horrible family had permanently changed you into someone I no longer recognized. They almost did, Mom, I admitted, but I'm still here. I'm still your daughter. I'm still myself underneath it all. Lucia took me to drink real tequila and dance salsa until my feet ached. Mateo made me laugh with absurd stories about his university life and romantic dramas. My father, a traditionally man of very few words, simply hugged me tightly and said in an emotional voice, "I always knew you were stronger than all of them combined, Mia." Slowly, painfully, I began the process of healing. It wasn't linear or remotely easy. There were days when rage consumed me completely, when I replayed the Christmas dinner obsessively in my mind, when I fantasized about increasingly elaborate revenges. There were days when I felt crushed by overwhelming sadness, crying for the marriage I thought I had, but which had never been remotely real. There were days when I passionately hated myself for being so naive, for allowing myself to be treated that way for so long without fighting. But there were also good days. Days when I woke up feeling genuinely light, free from the constant weight of trying to be someone I wasn't. Days when I ate delicious al pastor tacos from street stalls without worrying if it was appropriate or elegant. Days when I spoke Spanish all day without the ghost of Eleanor's voice in my head telling me it was rude. Days when I was simply Sophia again, not Richard's defective, rejected wife. In July, I finally felt ready to seriously think about my future. I had money now. More than I would need in my entire life if I was smart and sensible with it. I could do literally whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, be whoever I wanted to be. I decided to return to New York, not to Boston, never to Boston, but to the city where I was happiest, where I had had my flourishing career and my real independence. I rented a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn, in a building with a rooftop that had spectacular views of Manhattan. It was completely mine, only mine, decorated exactly as I wanted with bright, vibrant colors and authentic Latin American art. I also decided to actively return to my professional career. I contacted my old mentor from the gallery where I had worked before meeting Richard, who welcomed me with literally open arms. "The art world has missed you terribly, Sophia," he told me during our reunion coffee. "You still have that exceptional eye for talent. This is your chance to do something really special, something meaningful." He helped me get a position as senior curator at a new gallery opening in Chelsea, specializing exclusively in contemporary art from emerging Latin American women artists. My first official exhibition as senior curator was in September. It was a carefully selected collection of 12 emerging Mexican artists, exploring deep themes of identity, migration, belonging, and resistance. On opening night, as I watched the gallery completely full of people genuinely appreciating the art I had selected with so much care and passion, I felt more alive, more myself than I had felt in entire years. That same night, I also met Daniel. Daniel Reyes was a tenured professor of Latin American literature at Columbia, 10 years older than me, amicably divorced with 2 teenage children who lived primarily with their mother. He came to the opening because one of the exhibited artists had illustrated a special limited edition of 100 Years of Solitude that he regularly used in his literature classes. We started talking casually in front of a particularly intense painting about the experience of crossing the border, and 3 hours later we were still there, talking deeply about art, literature, politics, life. It wasn't love at first sight like it had been with Richard. It was something infinitely better, more solid. It was real, authentic connection between equals. He was intelligent without being arrogant, gentle without being weak, and genuinely deeply interested in what I had to say. He didn't care about my last name, my social pedigree, or how much money I had in the bank. He cared about what I thought about Garcia Marquez versus Juan Rulfo, whether I preferred Frida Kahlo or Rufino Tamayo. What exactly had led me to specialize in contemporary Latin American art? We started seeing each other casually, with no pressure. Coffees that naturally turned into long dinners, dinners that turned into endless walks through Central Park, walks that turned into entire nights talking until dawn about absolutely everything and nothing specific. It was completely different with him. There were no elaborate games, no social pretensions, no performance, just 2 adult people genuinely enjoying each other's company. "I'm not looking for anything serious yet," I warned him honestly after our 4th date. "I just got out of an absolutely horrible marriage. I need time to heal completely." "Then let's not do anything serious," he replied simply, with no pressure. "Let's just genuinely enjoy the present moment. No artificial pressure, no rigid expectations, just this." And that's what we did. For entire months, we simply existed together in our little private world of cozy cafes, quiet galleries, dusty bookstores, and deeply honest conversations. He never pressured for more than I was emotionally ready to give. He never made me feel like I had to be someone different from who I really was. It was with Daniel that I was finally able to talk completely unfiltered about everything that had happened to Richard and his toxic family. Not just the cold facts of the divorce, but the deep, complicated emotions, the paralyzing shame, the justified rage, the sharp pain of having invested 6 full years of my life in someone who had never truly valued me. "You know what's the most fucked up thing about all this?" I told him one night, as we lay in his cozy apartment, looking at the ceiling in comfortable silence, that a part of me still obsessively wonders what I did wrong, as if there had been some magic thing I could have done differently that would have made them finally love and accept me. "You didn't do absolutely anything wrong, Sophia," said Daniel, turning to look directly at me with eyes full of genuine understanding. "Some people are fundamentally incapable of loving someone they perceive as different, as inferior to them. That is completely their defect, their moral limitation, not yours at all. But I changed so much for them. I let go of so much of myself, of who I really was. And that was your only real mistake, not that you weren't enough or good enough, but that you desperately tried to be less than who you really were to please people who were never going to genuinely value you anyway. But you've learned that lesson now. You're not going to repeat it." He was right. He was always right in those simple but profound ways that made everything seem clearer, more manageable. Over time, naturally, what Daniel and I had become organically something more serious, more committed, but completely different from what I had had with Richard. It was a genuine relationship between absolute equals, solidly built on mutual respect and authentic love, not on what each could do for the other socially or economically. It's December again. Almost 2 full years have passed since that horrible Christmas night that changed everything. I'm in my vibrant Brooklyn apartment decorating my tree exactly as I want, with bright multicolored lights, traditional Mexican craft ornaments. My mother sent me carefully packed, and not a single touch of the cold, beige, soulless elegance the Whitmores would have approved of. Daniel is in the kitchen, valiantly trying to make tamales based on a recipe he found online after I told him about my childhood Christmases. They're not turning out particularly well, but the genuine effort is adorable and makes me smile. Lucia is coming early tomorrow to spend the entire holidays with us. Mateo is seriously considering moving to New York to start his doctorate. My life is being solidly rebuilt, piece by piece, into something that is really genuinely mine. Yesterday I received something unexpected in the mail, an elaborate invitation to Richard and Amanda's wedding, elegantly scheduled for February next year. They wrapped it carefully with a brief note on expensive stationery. No hard feelings on our part. We genuinely hope you can celebrate this new beginning with us. I laughed when I read it. I laughed so hard, Daniel came out of the kitchen worried. After absolutely everything that had happened, after the devastating legal battle, the mutual public humiliation, the deep pain they had caused me, they really genuinely thought I was going to go to their damn perfect wedding. I was about to throw the invitation straight into the trash when Daniel came in wiping his hands on a kitchen towel, leaving a trail of corn masa. "What's that made you laugh like that?" he asked curiously. A formal invitation to Richard and his pregnant-turned-legitimate wife mistress's wedding. I handed him the elegant envelope. Apparently they have magnanimously decided they no longer hold any grudge against me. "Are you going to go?" "Of course not. It wouldn't make any sense. That chapter of my life is completely closed." "Or," said Daniel with that mischievous smile I had learned to love deeply, "you could go and show them precisely, exactly how well you're doing without them, how happy you are, how little you really needed them." I considered it for a moment. There was something undeniably attractive about the idea of showing up at that perfect wedding, radiant and successful, with a man who genuinely truly valued me by my side, of physically showing them that they hadn't broken me, that I had risen from their ashes stronger, more authentic than before. But then I realized something deep and important. I didn't need to prove absolutely anything to them. I didn't need their belated validation or forced acknowledgement. I had spent 6 long years of my life desperately seeking approval from people who were never, ever going to give it sincerely. And I had spent almost 2 full years painfully recovering from that fundamental mistake. My real victory wasn't in rubbing my rebuilt success in their faces. My true victory was that I no longer cared enough to want to do it. "No," I told Daniel with absolute clarity, ceremoniously tearing the invitation into small pieces. "I've given them enough of my time, my energy, my life. They're not getting another second of me." I threw it in the trash and returned to my bright tree, my rebuilt life, my future that was finally totally, completely, absolutely mine. That night, as Daniel and I ate the slightly burned but lovingly made tamales and laughed about his adorable culinary disaster, I received an unexpected message from Andrew. "Just wanted you to know," the simple message said, "that Mom is absolutely furious because you returned the invitation without even responding. She still fundamentally doesn't understand that she no longer has any power over you. It's beautiful to see. Happy holidays, Sophia. You deserve everything." I genuinely smiled, typing a quick response thanking him for his continued support and wishing him the best. Then I definitively put my phone on silent and focused completely on what really mattered, the living present, not the dead past. The Whitmores thought they destroyed me that horrible Christmas night. They thought the cruel applause would mark my definitive end, my complete and public defeat. But what they didn't understand, what they could never understand with their limited view of the world, is that just because something breaks you temporarily doesn't mean you're permanently destroyed. Sometimes you need to break completely so you can consciously rebuild yourself into something stronger, more authentic, more genuinely you. 2 years after the worst day of my life, I can say with absolute certainty and complete honesty, I am infinitely happier now than I ever was. Not a single day, as the ignored wife of Richard Whitmore. I have my restored and flourishing career. I have recovered my identity. I have my absolute freedom. I have a partner who loves me deeply for who I really am, not for who he can mold me to be. I have my family close and present. I have a bright future full of infinite possibilities that I actively choose, not those that are imposed on me externally. The divorce they thought would be my humiliating end turned out to be my true liberating beginning. And when I think now of that terrible night, of that cruel applause that echoed my public destruction, I no longer feel sharp pain or paralyzing humiliation. I feel gratitude. Deep gratitude because they showed me their horrible true colors before I wasted more precious years of my life. Gratitude because they forced me to find the strength I didn't know I had sleeping inside. Gratitude because their cruel rejection inevitably led me back to myself. Richard got exactly what he wanted: his pure blood heir and his socially appropriate wife who fits perfectly into his limited world. I got something infinitely better. I got my whole life back. And if I had to honestly choose between his golden world of empty appearances, constant hypocrisy, and disguised hatred, versus my imperfect but deeply authentic life, I would choose mine every time without hesitation. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't the considerable money I won, or the public humiliation they inevitably suffered. The best revenge is that I am genuinely deeply happy, while they are still trapped in their toxic world of endless pretensions, applying the same impossible expectations to Amanda that they once ruthlessly applied to me. I honestly wonder how long it will take before she too realizes the fundamental truth that she will never be enough for them, no matter what she does. That no woman ever will be, because the problem was never really with us. The problem always was and always will be with them. But that is no longer my concern or my problem. My story with the Whitmores ended definitively almost 2 years ago in a divorce court where I finally put my foot down firmly and said in a clear voice, "No more." Now my story is only completely, totally mine. And it's only just beginning. This Christmas, when I raise my glass of punch with Daniel and Lucia, I won't be toasting to the painful end of my marriage. I'll be toasting to my hard-won freedom, to my discovered strength, to my bright future. And somewhere in Boston, in a cold mansion decorated with soulless elegance, the Whitmores will be having another of their perfectly orchestrated dinners, with empty conversations and false smiles. And I'll be here, in my vibrant apartment full of color and real life, surrounded by people who really genuinely love me for who I am. And that fundamental contrast is absolutely all I need to know about who really won this war.